I mean, we can get started. Okay, awesome. We can head over to the call to order and roll call.
Great. Committee member Breeding is not here yet. Committee member Chen?
Here.
Committee member Larson?
Here.
Vice Chair Mira Venkatesh?
Here.
Committee member Mohammed? Here. Committee member Peterson?
Here.
Chair Fasoon?
Here.
Great.
Okay, after that, we can go on to the land acknowledgement before we get started with everything else. So the City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands, and we must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. Now we can go over to the approval of minutes, item 2.
Any comments or concerns with the minutes from March 16th? Okay.
I'll make a motion to pass the minutes.
I second.
All right. I'll do a roll call. Committee member Chen?
Aye.
Committee member Larson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mira Venkatesh?
Here.
Committee member Mohammed?
Here.
Committee member Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Fasoon?
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Minutes passed.
Awesome. So now we can go on to item 3, which will be public comments. So this is people who want to address the committee on an item that is not already on the agenda, and every speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Will anyone like to? Okay, I do see we have an attendee, so we can go over to public comment.
Okay. We'll pull up the clock real quick.
My apologies. Clock incoming.
No problem. I'll just give it wait 1 second for the clock.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I'm just adjusting the time. And here we go.
Good evening, everybody. Climate Action Committee commissioners. So I really like climate action because this is when, oh my gosh, climate action, taking action in the moment. I wasn't planning on saying that, but I just realized that while we're on here live. Climate action means, to me, it means to take action in the moment, not to procrastinate, because if you procrastinate on stuff with the climate, it's too late. And then the climate fails and then Earth is not habitable anymore. So, we always talk about making changes, positive changes, and we work on it. We get close, we get 99% of the way there, and then we kind of fade off a little bit. But we make the efforts. And what I'm getting at is that, sorry, I had Everett and Jones for dinner and stick barbecue sauce. So I'm doing all this dialogue, and the point I'm trying to make here is what's really going on. I mean, I still see plastic bags at our grocery stores. I still see plastic straws everywhere. I still see plastic to-go containers. I mean, I love sweet rice pudding, but I don't know. Maybe it could come in something other than plastic. Isn't plastic gasoline or petrol or made from gasoline or something? So we're putting food in gasoline? It's kind of weird. You know, there's so many other things out there. Bamboo, cardboard, paper, you know, personal bags. I see a lot of people bringing their own bags at the grocery store. That's great. I wish there was more incentive. I think you get like a 10-cent credit if you bring your own bag. It's just not enough. So I think we got to make some policies, and we need to talk about this item and discuss it again, hopefully on our future agenda item, please, because it's important. We really got to make efforts to get rid of these plastic straws and all this plastic. You know, Earth Day and eco-friendly and climate. So we got to take action for our climate, and we got to get rid of this plastic stuff, at least make strides toward the goal. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other members of the public with their hands raised at this time.
Okay, I think we can go on to item -4.
Great.
So item -4, we start with announcements. So let's start with item 4-1, which is sustainability, events, and resources.
Great. Pull up, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so for your sustainability events and resources this month, I'd like to highlight that you should mark your calendars for May 14th and 15th for the East Bay Green Home Tour. This free 2-day virtual tour of East Bay homes is a chance to learn about what others in the East Bay are doing to combat climate change, particularly related to home electrification. I encourage you all to learn more at eastbaygreenhome.com, and you'll also see that we'll be promoting this not only on our Earth Day 2022 webpage, but also in our social media. So keep an eye out for that. Another resource I'd like to draw your attention to is the albanysafestreets.com, which is an opportunity for members of the public to provide input to develop the local road safety plan, which is currently being developed by the Community Development Department. So on this webpage, you're able to provide input on where you think traffic improvements could be made. Those are my general sustainability events and resources updates. Now I would like to talk a little bit more about Earth Day 2022, which is this Friday, although we have been encouraging Albany community members to celebrate Earth Day all month long. I'm going back to 4-1. We have an Albany Community Expo coming up. That is April 30th, next Saturday. This will be held at the Albany Community Center on Marin Avenue. There will be different community groups as well as city departments showcasing resources and there to answer questions and chat with the community. There will also be a compost giveaway, which, sorry, Zoom is not helping me out here. There we go. The compost giveaway, and this is incorrect information, so I'm going to go back. Apologies. The compost giveaway will be taking place from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the morning of the Community Expo on Masonic Avenue in between Marin and Solano. It starts a couple hours earlier than the Community Expo, but they will be joint events. And Albany residents can download a waiver for compost on our website, or you should have received one in the mail from Waste Management. If you need a physical waiver printed for you, there are some in the City Hall lobby at 1000 San Pablo Avenue. But compost bags are free as long as you bring a waiver or fill out a waiver when you get to the event. Albany residents can take home up to 4 free bags of compost. So please come get some compost so that you can put it down in your garden and draw some carbon from the atmosphere. My last announcement for 4-1, apologies, I got ahead of myself, is that the citywide garage sale is coming up on Saturday, May 7th. This is being organized by Michelle, so if you have questions, please reach out to her. But at this point, I believe all applications are due by tomorrow. And then if you fill out an application noting what you'll be selling and where your garage sale will be located, your garage sale will be featured on a map that will be shared with the community so that all garage sales can take place on the same day, draw folks from not just Albany, but surrounding regions to come check out what you have to offer. So those are my general sustainability events and resources announcements. And I'm just going to roll right into the Earth Day 2022 announcements because they're somewhat the same thing. Again, Earth Day is this Friday. And you can find a plethora of resources on our albanyca.org/Earth Day webpage. This includes the Watershed Exploration Challenge that is being hosted by the City of Albany in partnership with the Watershed Project. Our City of Albany Earth Day bingo cards. We received about 9 kid bingo cards submitted and a couple adult Earth Day bingo cards, which is very exciting. You have 10 more days to fill out your bingo card to be entered into a raffle to win a sustainable prize. So please check those out. You'll also find resources available from Stop Waste, the Alameda County Clean Water Program, Energy Upgrade California, the Earth Day Network, and then, as I mentioned, there's information about the 2022 East Bay Green Home Tour. Those are my 4-1 and 4-2 announcements. At this point, Michelle, I'd like to check in and make sure I got all the the citywide garage sale information correct. Great, thumbs up from Michelle. Does anyone have any questions about 4-1 or 4-2, sustainability events and resources and Earth Day 2022? Okay, seeing none, I will pass it to Michelle for announcement 4-3.
Thanks, Lizzie. So this one is about our multifamily EV charging pilot program. Last time we had checked in, we talked a little bit about our focus group with building owners. And since then, Johnny and I have hosted a focus group for tenants. We had some kind of mixed results with that. We got a very large audience and a lot of great questions and educational opportunities. However, a lot of the attendees were not actually Albany residents, it turns out. It seems that our advertising kind of went beyond our control into some other arenas for people that didn't quite realize what the program was, but we still got a chance to talk to people about electric vehicles, which was great. But in other exciting news, Johnny and I officially launched the application to participate in the program today. So it's now open. We've sent it to both our building owners that joined us for the focus group, to our Albany Property Rights Advocates building owner group, and then we'll also be mailing out information on that to all the other eligible building owners as well. And the due date for it is on May 20th. So we're really excited and hoping to get some great applications on that. Anything else you'd like to add on that, Johnny?
No, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that update.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we have a question, so I guess I'll stop there before jumping on to the next one.
Yeah, Committee Member Peterson?
Sorry, it looks like Eric was ahead of me.
Oh, go ahead, Committee Member Lark.
Yeah, I raised my virtual hand. Thanks. What can you remind me what the criteria is for applying for this? What's the apartment size that you ended up with?
8 to 20 units.
Okay, cool. And any particular feedback from the tenants that you wanted to pass on as far as motivations, detractors?
I think, so one of the things that's tricky is that we did get data from the tenants, but most of them, like I said, weren't actually Albany tenants. So, we can't read too much into like the specifics for our community. However, I think it did generally kind of resemble most of the issues and interests that we've just kind of seen generally and heard about. So people having range anxiety, for instance, questions about the cost, the maintenance issues potentially, people interested in what the different rebates and incentives look like. And then also, I think a lot of curiosity about charging times and the kind of cost and capacity there. And also some level of confusion about the different charging types. So we spent a while clarifying those as well.
Yeah.
Johnny might have more thoughts on that too.
No, I still believe that covers the biggest.
I covered it.
Yeah, that was the predominant feedback.
Can you, I know that, I mean, but renters are renters, I think, whether they're Albany or not, but I mean, could you draw any conclusions about like their general interest in charging station at their parking spot versus otherwise? Was that?
Yeah, I mean, most people definitely preferred to have one at home, and we're also interested more in the level 2 chargers than level 1.
Yeah.
Yes. It seems as though, fortunately though, most respondents did indicate that they believe themselves to have access to charging outside of the home, even though that's where most of it would be done. So it's nice to know that they feel strongly that the community has public chargers. But yes, that was one. I think I had something else to share. I'm forgetting it at the moment.
Thanks.
It'll pop back up.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, thanks. Great. So the applications, you mentioned you're notifying owners. Are these just then going to be the owners that participated in the group that you discussed it with? And I also wondered, did any of the building owners try to encourage some of their tenants to participate in the tenant discussions?
So today I sent the application, the information to our email list of the building owners that were in our focus group, but then we're also going to be sending mail to the listed addresses for the other eligible buildings. There's about 50 or so. So we'll be notifying everybody else, but we don't have all their emails, so it's going to take a little bit longer. And then we did, for those building owners that came to the focus group, we sent them some information and a survey for their tenants to try to get their tenants to come to the group. As far as I know, we didn't have any tenants of those buildings attend. And I didn't receive confirmation from the building owners of whether or not they actually did reach out to the tenants. So I can't say for sure. It might be that they reached out and no one was interested. It might be that some people did come and I don't know it. Or that the building owners just didn't reach out. So, but we did provide them with a survey for their tenants to take and ask them to include it as part of their application. We didn't make it a requirement, but kind of said this would be a plus so that we could get, more information about the tenants, because that is something we're looking at in selecting the applications.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on that one? And it looks like we might have a public comment. Should we wait for the end of the announcements for that? Okay. Then I will march along to announcement 4.4. And this is an update on the discussion we had last month about an all-electric ordinance. So the good news is that we have gotten the go-ahead both from our community development director and the legal team to start pursuing an all-electric ordinance. So that's exciting news that you guys asked about last month. We don't have a draft this month for you because it took some time to get the go ahead on that. But we will be working on one starting out soon. The so the all electric ordinance that we're going to start working on, it's not going to be like the kind that Berkeley has, which is called a natural gas ban. It's a different kind that works within the building code instead, that requires buildings to be all electric rather than making sure they don't have the gas infrastructure. So it's sort of some legal differences, but effectively it comes to the same result of all electric buildings. And that route is a little bit safer in terms of the legal aspects of it, and it's also easier in some ways. So that's what we're planning to pursue. And when we come with the draft ordinance, we'll have all kinds of details on those specifics for you guys. Our timeline plan right now is to bring that to you guys either in May or June, hopefully May, but probably more likely June, and then kind of shop that through and then hopefully bring it to council sometime in the fall. We would like to have it passed along with our updated building codes by the end of the year. So that's the plan right now. Anything you'd like to add to that, Lizzie?
No, I think that sounds great. Like Michelle mentioned, we'll be bringing this to the committee as soon as we're able to bring a draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have to kind of start over from the draft that we had before because it's a different method and some of the details have changed in the meantime, but we'll be working on it.
Looks like Committee Member Peterson has a question.
Yeah, so thank you. This is great. Thank you for moving this ahead and moving it along. I know that that's been challenging. I had a question about it. This is more than just new construction, right? Will this also be requirements for major remodelings and for ADUs?
Depends on the way we write it. There are there's a variety in the ordinances that exist and the specifics of how you define major construction and all of that. So it kind of depends, but we definitely can. And I think whether that ends up in the final document depends on your guys' recommendation and council's decision ultimately. There are some limitations on what we can do, but generally, yeah, major reconstruction and ADUs are included in many of the existing ordinances.
Yeah, because I would encourage that, major being at least when it triggers fire suppression sprinklering, which is a really well-known level for Albany modifications. And then ADUs too. I wasn't sure if that gets into dicey issues with the state law. But since there's so many of those going in, it's just, the more that have gas appliances, and gas piped to them, just the longer it's going to take for us to undo that later. So I would encourage it to be as inclusive as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely be working on all those definitions and what we can include.
Committee Member Larson.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. This is exciting to get this moving forward. Is that new municipal, business, and residential? Any new buildings in Albany?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure we can require it legally for any new buildings. A lot of cities have exemptions for various building types. And so that's part of the process of figuring this out too, is what kinds of buildings we might want to exempt. But at least at a starting level, I'm pretty sure that any new construction would be included.
Okay.
Any other questions?
If not, we can move on to 4.5, which I can introduce, but then I will turn the mic over to our new committee member. Very exciting evening. We're joined by a new committee member, Mohammed. Hadia, if you would like to unmute yourself and say hello to the committee and maybe just say a couple words about why you decided to join the committee.
Hello. I'm Hadia. I'm a sophomore student at Albany High. Um, I specifically joined because at my old school in town, I was pretty involved with the community over there, and I was really interested in sustainability efforts. So by doing this application, that will just help me in further doing some efforts towards sustainability and towards the climate. And I thought it was a really good idea to join.
Well, welcome to the Climate Action Committee.
Yes, we're very happy to have you, and please, make comments all the time and keep us on track to doing something here. We need your involvement. We appreciate your time too.
Thank you.
It's exciting to have 2 Albany High members on the committee. Great. And with that, I think that concludes our announcements, and I do see 2 hands raised. So if we could pull up the clock. Great. Candace, you may be muted. Candace?
Okay, sorry, I had to find. I wanted to say something about the. I'm actually here to talk about point of sale ordinance, but I went through the Berkeley electrification hearings, and I have some material from that you might be interested in. But one of the things to really emphasize is that all electric construction is much cheaper. You save a lot of money by not putting gas infrastructure. That includes ADUs, big buildings, hospitals, whatever it is. So it's really a big advantage in that way also. And I think that would be interesting to your council to.
I'm so sorry. I went to lower hand. Candace, that was my apologies. I went to lower hand and I accidentally muted you. You should be able to speak again.
Lizzie, she's still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I am so sorry.
Okay, what I wanted to tell you is I'm here to speak about the point of sale ordinance, but I did go through Berkeley's hearings on electrification, and one of the main arguments for it is, besides climate change, is that it's much, much cheaper. You save a lot of money by not putting gas infrastructure into buildings, and that includes ADUs. I think you can save easily $30,000, $35,000 on an ADU by making it all electric, and certainly includes larger buildings. There are many buildings across the state, including the new Santa Rosa Kaiser that's all electric. So it's really a pretty well-defined path at this point, and people should feel very confident going ahead with it. That's all.
Thank you, and I apologize again for the for muting you mid-sentence. Okay, next we have Jeremiah.
Hi, thanks. The last speaker was setting a good trend. I just wanted to add one more thing to it, is possibly even homeowners insurance might even be cheaper for not having gas, posing, extra fire risk or something. So it could reduce the, insurance. Okay, so what I wanted to say was just one thing. I had a question on when we were talking about the multi-unit apartment electric car charger stations. My question is the car charging station supposed to be on the private property of the lot of the apartment, like somewhere in the garage or somewhere on the private property? Or is it possible it could be right there on the sidewalk? How we have adopt a street tree or a sidewalk tree. Maybe we can have a a sidewalk car charging. So, you know, if our driveway's full, then we can offer, maybe the sidewalk one could be open for the public. And since the sidewalk is 50-50 by the city of Albany and then 50% by the homeowner, maybe the car charger on the sidewalk could be 50-50 or something. So my question is it on the sidewalk, or can it be on the sidewalk for the apartment? Can it extend to the sidewalk? Can they have both, maybe inside the garage or in the driveway and on the sidewalk? Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Lucinda?
Hello, I just wanted to thank you so much for pursuing the all electric. When this, I was at the I believe it was the December meeting when this was discussed. And at that time, it just seemed like the door was closed. So I'm really happy to see that the door is now open and that we hopefully we be joining the large number of cities that do have all electric ordinances. I would encourage the ordinance. I know the details are yet to be worked out, but I would encourage the inclusion of ADUs and also major reconstruction. And thank you to the speaker who mentioned the cost, the lowered cost for electric. I haven't heard that discussed before, and I think that's really important. And the other really important thing I think to remember is that the improved air quality, indoor air quality from electric as opposed to gas. So thank you. That's it.
I don't see any other members of the public with their hand raised.
Chair Fassoon, would you like me to address the question about the EV chargers?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Yeah, so for this pilot project, the idea is just to install the EV chargers on the property of the building itself. So in whatever parking spaces they have. It is possible to install EV chargers along the sidewalk, although there are a lot of issues with that when it comes to the different kinds of, utilities going under the sidewalk and getting the power there. So generally the cost is much higher. And then there's also kind of complications when it comes to ownership. So that's why we've decided to just focus on the spaces that are privately owned and within the building.
Thank you, Michelle. And I believe that concludes our announcements.
Okay, then it looks like we can move on. So we don't have any presentations, so we can skip right to item 6, which is discussion and possible action items on matters related to the following items. So we can jump right into item 6-1, which is the proclamation of appreciation for Laura Merchant.
Yes, I will pull up the proclamation and read it aloud for the committee, and then we'll take a vote to adopt it. Laura Merchant could not join us this evening, but I can send her the YouTube recording if anyone after the proclamation would like to say a few words. Okay, you should see the proclamation on my screen. Proclamation of appreciation to Laura Merchant for her service on the Climate Action Committee. Whereas Laura Merchant began her service on the Climate Action Committee in January 2021, and whereas Merchant served as vice chair of the committee from June 2021 to January 2022, and whereas as an active member of the Outreach and Engagement Subcommittee, Merchant co-hosted a 2021 Carbon-Free Albany Community Forum, and whereas Merchant's demonstrated commitment to environmental justice and equity was inspirational to the committee, and whereas during her term of service, Merchant was influential in achieving the city's sustainability goals, including influencing implementation of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, choosing default electricity products through East Bay Community Energy, and promoting the carbon-free Albany platform. And whereas Merchant is recognized by the committee for her thoughtfulness and dedication to sustainability and for her commitment to making Albany a more environmentally responsible city. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Climate Action Committee does express its appreciation to Laura Merchant for her service to the city of Albany and wishes her the best in her future endeavors. Okay. That is our proclamation. If anyone would like to make a motion.
Sure, I'll move that we pass the proclamation.
Second.
Okay. This time I'll do a roll call vote. Committee Member Breeding?
Yes.
Committee Member Chen?
Yes.
Committee Member Larson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mira Venkatesh?
Yes.
Committee Member Mohammed?
Yes.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Fasoon?
Yes.
Motion carries. Proclamation adopted. I see Committee Member Larson has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was great working with Laura. I got to work with her on that the Carbon Free Albany Forum, and she was always very professional and energetic, and so it was really fun to work with her on the committee.
Do you see we have a member of the public with their hand raised? Jeremiah?
Hi, this is Jeremiah. Yeah, I definitely want to give a shout out to Laura. I don't see that you guys put a picture of her up there. Maybe in the future, maybe we could put pictures if the person agrees. But I do think I remember, I think she had like brunette hair. I think it was straight, kind of long. And I don't think she wore glasses. But I think she was great. If it's the person I'm thinking of, yeah, she was really intelligent, and I know she did give it her all, and it was great. I remember a lot of meetings with her here, and I just want to say thank you to her. She deserves the respect.
Okay. No other members of the public with their hand raised. Back to you, Chair Fasoon. Oh, I see.
Committee Member Chen?
Yeah, I wanted to express my appreciation to Laura as well. In my role as chair of the committee briefly, I worked with Laura to plan a lot of meetings, and she provided really thoughtful feedback for what we should include on the agenda. And I really appreciate especially that she helped cover for me as chair when I was busy with a newborn. So yeah, thank you so much for your time on the committee, Laura.
Okay. Thank you, Committee Member Chen. I'll make sure to send her the recording of this video. The power of YouTube.
Yeah, before we move on, I didn't know Laura as long as a lot of you had, but being on the meetings with her, she did offer really valuable insight and brought really good energy to the committee. So I'm very thankful for everything she did. And does anyone have anything else? If not, we can move on.
Well, I'd just like to also chime in and say that it was great working with Laura. I really liked her dedication, her intelligence. She had great background that was applicable to what we're doing, and I think she had real passion for what we're doing too. So we will certainly miss her. And to members of the audience, I mean, we now have another student on board, which is great. I love getting the student enthusiasm. But if you ever want to be on this committee and put your own energies towards improving how Albany brings about climate change, please consider it next time things come up and they post in the city news, they're looking for volunteers. Step up. It's a great thing to do. And thank you, Laura, for stepping up and doing your part.
Okay, and with that, yeah, huge shout out to you, Laura. And I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is item 6-2, the Home Electrification Subcommittee Mandate Presentation and Discussion.
Yeah, so I thought I would just sort of kick this off, and then Venkatesh can, Mayor Venkatesh can add her thoughts. But, we've been striving to do outreach to get input on just, wide discussion from as many people that would be affected as possible of what are really the opportunities to bring about reasonable and hopefully rapid electrification of existing homes, of which there are many in Albany. I mean, we talk a lot about passing requirements for building code, remodeling, new builds, but Albany is predominantly a city of existing buildings. And unless someone comes and remodels it, those buildings are continuing to use gas. That contributes, I think it was something like 40% of the emissions that are coming from us in Albany, and we need to find a way to bring that down. So one thought was to look at the point when homes do change or properties do change ownership. We know that there are requirements for the upgrade of sewer laterals because those were negatively impacting water quality, and broken sewer laterals were seeping sewage into the storm drains and into the bay. So that became a very bad thing. And I think our water district eventually had to sue to get ordinances in place that would require that laterals would be replaced at point of sale. You could not sell a home that was draining sewage into the storm drain system. So we're in a position right now where we have properties in Albany that can be sold, no problem, but they pollute. At some point in the future, I'm sure it will be, and this could not be until the 40s sometime, but at some point it'll be illegal to sell a home that pollutes. So between now and the point of it being illegal, what can we do to incentivize and make things happen more rapidly? And that's what we're kind of looking at. We know this is a pretty highly charged issue, and there are people with a lot of strong feelings about it, but we're hopeful that we can come up with real measures that will incentivize and or require folks to do reasonable amounts of change, and are interested to hear those that have comments that are involved in the industry, either in real estate or any aspect of home property ownership, even if you're a homeowner or if you're a recent home buyer. So that's sort of what we're doing. We did an outreach to local agents that work, not to all of them. I mean, there are a lot of agents that represent home sellers in Albany. We did send messages to those who have their offices in Albany, and then to some that we know work in Albany and have a strong interest in sustainability, and got essentially 2 responses, which wasn't very encouraging. But one of those folks are here today, and I'm not sure. I'd have to check who's actually on the list here to see if, I just see.
I think Candace is on the list.
Yeah, Candace Hyde Wang is certainly someone that has opinions and thoughts about this and has done a lot of research. So what we thought would be useful for the Climate Action Committee to hear, since we had gone through several other suggestions about having a custom-made rating system or some other stuff, that we would at least get some industry insiders to give their point of view. So at this point, if it's possible, I'd like to, well, first let me turn to Member Mirovikatesh and say, did you want to add anything to that, or have I covered it pretty well?
I think you've covered it pretty well, and note that this is, we did some outreach to, granted not all, but I want to say I think about 6 in total, and we heard back from 2, but it will be useful to just hear these recurring opinions on future calls, especially if you do sort of have 2 opposing points of view. But Candace generously offered her time to sort of share her perspective, and hopefully we can continue some of these conversations. Yeah, but we'd love to. I think Committee Member Peterson, do you think this is just a good time to turn it over?
Yeah, I was thinking. I was hopeful that I would see the other agent point of view on how impacts of mandates or any requirements at point of sale impact house costs and whatever. But I think at this point, there may be people in the audience that would like to make some comments too, and we can certainly field that. Unfortunately, we can't really have a whole lot of discussion back and forth, but again, we just want to get some ideas out there, get some input. Candace was kind enough to, she's been in the industry a long time, and she's been struggling with this for quite a while and has a lot of background, especially in Berkeley. So Candace, if you're, I see you're there, so if someone could promote her to a presenter.
I will promote her to panelist without removing permission to talk again. But I just want to clarify for you, Committee Member Peterson, you're more than welcome to have a back and forth, and since this is a discussion item.
Yeah, I don't know what the limits are on public comment then, if everyone's open to 3 minutes and we can't go back and forth with members of the public. I mean, certainly between the committee and between presenters, we can do back and forth. So sorry if I confused that. So. Oh, sorry, I may have misunderstood that, but yes. Yeah. So I think the idea here is we've got someone who has a point of view, and committee members are certainly welcome to ask them lots of questions about that point of view.
And I would suggest real quick that we structure it as, Candace, if you want to provide your thoughts, then we'll have the committee members ask questions. Then we can have the members of the public ask questions and make comment, and then the committee can discuss and maybe have a little bit more of a back and forth.
Yeah, and just another, Candace, if you could give a little background on your experience, I mean, just who you are, that would be helpful.
Okay, so I've been in housing close to 55 years. And I started out, I have a degree in architecture from Berkeley. I started out as a low-income housing planner in Berkeley and Oakland. And then I built the house I'm living in 1977. It was one of the first years that Title 24 went into effect. So we had to go through an energy audit then, design then. And I've been involved with Greenpoint rating, but I particularly, because I've been in real estate, I made a transition into real estate and also remodeling. I was involved with Berkeley's early point of sale ordinance, which was called RECO, Residential Energy Conservation Ordinance. And that was before we knew about electrification. And it had a checklist that required at point of sale things like attic insulation, duct sealing, water saving fixtures, LED lights. It developed over time. So it was a really good ordinance. I think Nancy Skinner started it, and it went on for about 30 years. People were required. So the key to that, and the thing that made it famous all over the country, was that it had mandatory measures. And mandatory measures meant you absolutely have to do this. There's no getting out of it. But we're putting a cap on how much you have to spend, and that was $7,500. Now, if you think about that, that's not a small amount of money, because RECO was around until about 2015. So now we have much higher prices, and you can draw a conclusion from that. But the reason point of sale is pretty powerful are a couple. One is a lot of money's generated. People have the ability to pay for inspections, pay for work to get done. They habitually do pay for work to get done on the house at that time. Another thing that's very, very important is that it's automatic. So it's very hard and expensive to do outreach and try to convince people to do something like, would you please fix your sewer because your sewer is leaking sewage? So we don't do that. We just mandate it because it's a public health hazard. And, but the problem with point of sale is my industry has a national position, and it's their number one position that there shall be no point of sale ordinances. So whenever you run into point of sale, it's usually knocked down. So, but in terms of Albany, I just did a little look at last year. You may want to write this down. Albany last year, I don't know what your total number of units is, but last year, your detached units, there were 115 that sold. The condos were 60. And the 2 to 4 units were 12 buildings that had 31 total units. So the total is 187 units that could have been upgraded with basically no effort. And cumulatively, if you add this up over 10 years, 20 years, you get a really substantial margin. I think in Berkeley, I figured in 15 years, you could do like a third of the, or a major portion of the units. I have to go back to my notes. I'm sorry, I should say that. So they're really effective if you do them. But you're fighting, realtors don't like to have the extra work done if they don't have to, but they will do it. We have to do a lot of inspections. Typically we do 2 to 8 inspections on a house. So it's not really a big deal to have one more to do. So I think actually for Albany, it would be pretty easy to design your own inspection, because all you have to do is go into a house, you have to look at the service, you have to look at the box, and then you have to prioritize the appliances you're changing out. And that could almost be attached to a very standard report that we do in real estate, which is it's called the general inspection. Almost every house sold has a general inspection. And most of those inspectors can do this kind of analysis of the electrical system. But I want to get back to mandatory measures and why they're so important. Berkeley, unfortunately, got rid of RICO and put in BASO, and they adopted a scoring system which was designed by the Department of Energy to apply all across the country. And I think the underlying idea is if people get a low score, they're going to be motivated to make behavioral change or spend money on their house to fix it. That doesn't happen. Berkeley actually hasn't had much effect from that, and it's been a pretty expensive program to run when you're not getting any change. So you really have to ask people to make those moves at point of sale. And then you can also do outreach to people or have other kinds of rules. For instance, every time you change out a water heater, it's got to be a heat pump. But the point of sale is very effective if you can get it passed by your council. And so so I'm kind of done now. If you want to ask me any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
That's great. Thank you very much, guys. I'm sure. So the idea was to sort of get that point of view out and now let council members. I have some questions, and I see that Eric Larson does too. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for making the time, Candace. You mentioned that realtors are, sort of upfront against any kind of point of sale thing, but in the instance of a point of sale mandate for electrification, what can you talk a little bit about what's behind that? You know, what's the concern? What is the concern, like loss of a sale or slowing down the process or something?
There's no justified concern. There isn't any. What you're running up against is a very, very powerful lobby. And their number one rule is no point of sale ordinances. They fight every single one that comes along. There was a big fight recently over Oakland's sidewalk ordinance. Oakland has a point of sale sidewalk ordinance where the seller or the buyer has to repair the sidewalk with every sale. So, but because I guess the city was getting sued, they just said, tough luck, we're going to keep it. But we tried to, and I tried to, because I work with the League of Women Voters Climate Change, and it's actually the Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville League of Women Voters. And we tried to get BASO changed so that there were mandatory measures, and we were able to get it changed so that it's now point of listing rather than point of sale. So as soon as that listing is signed, you have to give certain information to the seller so they know at least that the city is recommending electrification. But frankly, in the heat of the moment with real estate sales now, it doesn't really do much. And the real estate organization, our local real estate organization, was effective in getting it shifted to the buyer, and the buyer doesn't have to do it for 6 months, making it, in my opinion, essentially useless. Because if somebody has a dysfunctional heater or a dysfunctional water heater, they're going to change it immediately and then have this inspection and then find out, oh, maybe I should have put in a heat pump, but too late. So.
Yeah, maybe also, Monica, I see Venkatesh, did you want to ask any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. And you said that, I mean, there was something that you mentioned in your last statement, which was that there wasn't really a very justified opposition. It was more in alignment with maybe the national lobby. Mm-hmm. And do you think that in this particular case, where it's sort of like a point of sale sustainability mandate, do you think it would, I mean, first of all, does the lobby have internal sustainability goals? Would this be something that's a reflection of that? So yes, point of sale mandates in general are pushed back against, but maybe something that was sustainability focused could be more appetizing, or do you think it's just sort of all they're against it?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact, once they get wind of this, I'll just tell you, everybody's going to come out of the woodwork and start giving money to your council people and telling them to vote against it. I mean, it's a very, very powerful anti-climate lobby. The California Association of Realtors, they come out against every climate thing that's attached to real estate, every single one. And nationally, it's the same. And there's a lot of written history on this, you know, going back decades. People have tried and tried across the country to get point of sale. So you just have to be very tough and determined and not listen. Because again, realtors are fact totems. Whatever we have to do, we do. That's it. No big deal. We get the sewer inspected, we get the house inspected, we get pest inspection, we get a roof inspection. No big deal to get an electrical inspection. And then they'll tell you, oh, well, everybody's suffering because real estate prices are so high. That's true. They're suffering, but people who are buying these houses do have a lot of money. People who are selling them are getting a lot of money. And then also we do have the example of this early program that Berkeley had, San Francisco had, I think Roseville had it. These mandatory measures were very, very successful. And they did make things happen. So,
yeah, I had a question, just going back to like the RICO and the BISO, and I don't want you to go into super in depth, but it sounded like when Berkeley first started looking at this, the idea was at some point they were going to require existing homeowners, whether it was point of sale or not, to have to improve the energy performance of their home. You couldn't just have a poor performing home. And that was sort of what RICO got born out of. And then, of course, the best time to do that is at point of sale, when you could actually put up a requirement and people would jump that hurdle because they want to get the sale done and the whole thing. And then RICO morphed into BISO, which was kind of can you explain why RICO went away? I mean, was that through lobbying efforts?
Well, there was a realtor who got elected to the city council. Mm-hmm. And he was very powerful, and he put a lot of realtors on the committee that that evaluated the new program. And the new program was sort of, I mean, to some degree, RICO was out of date because one of the things they mentioned was you can't just insulate an attic anymore. You have to seal it and then insulate it. And then California traditionally allowed insulation over knob and tube, but that's not really such a great idea. It's the only state in the union that allows it. I don't know if we still allow it, but so there were some changes that some adjustments that needed to be done. But basically, it was a classic example of real estate coming in and changing, getting rid of mandatory measures and changing a program that at least got stuff done to one that doesn't do anything really. Except it has a big infrastructure in the city. It's expensive, I would imagine, to run.
Yeah, I know some people say it has some, although very limited. No one's claiming that because of the BISO program, they've had this huge upgrade in building efficiency. And I don't know if I don't think BISO, since it's based on the home energy score, really incentivizes electrification at all, because the home energy score is a pretty out of date evaluation of the home as far as, it's energy efficiency, but it certainly isn't emissions reducing. So I have concerns about that. I think going back 5 years, this committee has looked at doing our own, we call it a BEDO, Building Energy Assessment and Disclosure Ordinance. And we did even a pilot project on that. And what we found out was even homes that did the pilot project got a low score, got some recommendation, it didn't really change much from the emissions point of view. It'd make the home a little bit more efficient, but we weren't really impacting home emissions. Yeah. And now what we really know is it's decarbonization, electrification. So what I was thinking, or at least an idea that I wanted to pursue and discuss with people such as yourself, was, well, we know what these are. Like you were saying, attic insulation is one of the primary things. Then having enough power or an electrical system that is up to date and adequate enough to support a fully electrified home. And then you can just tick off the appliances. Gas water heater goes to electric heat pump. Gas dryer goes to an electric dryer. Gas range goes to induction range. Furnace goes to a heat pump system, and you could just establish these, and you could give them certain values, and you could say, it's starting on this year, it's mandatory to at least do this. You could even have EV car charge stations, you could have certain things, but you would just make these, that's where you would have your mandatory measure. And, people could say, well, I don't, it'd be like upgrading your sewer lateral. You just wouldn't have a choice. You pick, at first it would be, you pick one of these, and here, by the way, if you have to upgrade your panel, here's an extra $2,000 the city can give you to help with that, which actually I think is a little, with 1.6 to $2 million houses, it's silly that the city has to give you, $2,000 or $3,000 to do something you should do anyway. But I mean, just to ease it in and make it, people can say you're you're making all this cost happen. I mean, what I really want to see is people seriously considering and doing these particular upgrades. And, you know, if they want to do other things, I mean, if they want to repaint the house or do whatever, that's fine. But there should be some standard ones, especially when you see homes before sale put in a instant gas hot water system.
Yeah.
Or a big, huge, you know, Wolf
brand new water heater
gas, yeah, or a brand new gas heater. It's just backwards. So, and I really liked what you said about point of listing. We've had some discussion with this in the past, and people said, well, if it's point of sale, how do you know, things go into escrow, blah, blah, blah. When do you get the money back? How do you even evaluate it? Yada, yada. And it could be very complicated. This, it could just be, you know, you've got to do these things when you list, you know, pick one, do it, and then you're okay. And at least we would have some sort of impact. But that was kind of what do you think of that sort of approach of just sort of a
I think you should definitely have a monetary amount, and I would tentatively suggest 1% split 50-50 between buyer and seller. Now remember the background of RICO in Berkeley. The maximum was $7,500 at that time before 2015. So we've got much higher prices now. We've got a real wealthy bunch of buyers, and, you know, sellers are benefiting. So that's what I would, first of all, I'd say attach money to it. That you have to spend some money. And then you could say any water heater over 10 years old. I think the biggest use of gas in the Bay Area is water heaters. And upgrading the service. So, of course, being able to charge a car in a house is really important. Upgraded service, actually, people will make money. A seller can make money on having an upgraded service. That's one of the things people look for in a house. So some of these improvements, you know, they will make money on. And of course, if you advertise it to people, they will be much more interested in the value it gives them. So did I answer your question, Nick?
Yeah, no, I think this is really good stuff, because you have sort of insight from the point of view of being, you know, representing buyers, representing sellers, seeing how the whole process goes. You've done this hundreds of times. So I think that's really valuable. What I get a little worried about is, do you know of anyone that has actually said, I mean, Berkeley did say you had to spend a certain amount of money when you sell to address these, you know, spend up to this amount, but you don't need to spend anything more. And this is probably something we have to go to, you know, the city attorney about, but if the city of Albany said, okay, every time you list a house and you're going to sell it, 1% split between the owner and the seller has to be invested in decarbonizing the home. I don't know if, you know, is that going to, you know, instantly end up in a big, you know, lawsuit going through which is something the city can't afford to kind of.
Yeah, I think you have to be the climate advocate and try it. The question is, would CAR sue the city of Albany? Could you get a pro bono attorney? I don't know. I really don't know. They're very, very, I've listened to all the propaganda for a long time, and I've watched CAR for many, many years come out against, I mean, if you remember, there a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, there was a statewide initiative to improve storm drainage because of the bigger storms we're getting and flooding and climate change. And they came out with all guns pounding against it. Luckily, the electorate was smarter than that. They voted it in anyway. But I mean, it's a good professional organization. I don't want to be too hard on them. But when it comes to climate change, think Russia and Ukraine. It's just like that. It's like, we're going to level it. We're going to stop it. And so you have to be prepared for a fight. I think all this electrification, really, you have to be prepared for a fight. That's been my experience. And I've been working with the league on it for some years. Even within the league, people were shocked if you say no more gas. I mean, they were offended.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been, actually it's been relatively recent where people actually, and you still have a lot of people that are just sort of wedded, especially with cooking, to gas ranges and whatnot. But I just, again, trying to come up with a process that evolves, doesn't slam right away. It was interesting that you said some of these changes make money anyway. So I'd really love, to get industry people behind doing, they would just tell their sellers, look, do this, because you're future-proofing your house, and that's what the new sellers want, and they'll pay more for it. I imagine if someone put
you have to tell them that.
Yeah.
You have to, because they're not going to listen. They're not going to say it. You have to say, look, your sellers are going to make money on this. This is going to be great for them. Having an updated electrical box that isn't going to catch fire, that isn't a Federal Pacific box or something, that's great. They're going to make an extra $2,000 on the sale, or $5,000 or whatever,
Yeah, but it's a little difficult to kind of get people to move over and then start embracing that. I kind of think of like Walk Score, where all of a sudden, no one really talks, but all of a sudden it becomes this marketing feature where electrification could actually be a positive marketing feature, and then real estate agents would just push it with clients on their own without having to be cudgeled into, having to do stuff. But,
well, one thing you could do is, I remodeled a house about 10 years ago under Greenpoint rating. And Greenpoint rating gives you a little thing to put on your window, a little sticker that says this is a Greenpoint rated house. So you could set up a whole thing in Albany where this is really a thing. People get rewarded. They get a prize. They get a brass plate on their house saying this is an electrified house, and really make it and I suggested that Berkeley do that. I think that would really go over well in Berkeley, but, they didn't. But, really make it some kind of rewarding thing that a realtor can advertise.
Well, and what's interesting, and people have brought this up, in Europe, in the European Union, every property that's for sale or for rent has this evaluation that is mandatory, that shows how much energy it uses, how efficient it is, how much it costs, and all that. It's mandatory. You have to show it. So buyers look at that, and if it doesn't look good, they're not as interested in it. And so we were thinking at one point, we were considering this thing called house grade, and we would make it mandatory that as you listed the home, it had 2 grades. One was for energy efficiency, the other was for electrification. And people would be selling homes that were like a D and a D, and this buyer would go, well, why is it a D? And then they have to explain to them. And so people would be more motivated to try to get B's and A's in there instead of D's.
But this is another thing we tried and were shot down on. Okay, in order for a buyer to get that information, it needs to go into the MLS. Mm-hmm. And there is a way to get it into the MLS. And if you look at those listings in Europe, they all have that score.
Right.
But
right.
they would not put that in our MLS.
Mm.
Now, Berkeley could have insisted. They could have said every house in Berkeley has to have the BASO score on the MLS, but they didn't. So I think you can think about those things, but basically the thing is mandatory measures, getting that passed. I mean, if we could do it in Berkeley with RICO, you can do it here. And you just say, this has to happen, I think the inspection would prioritize it. Is the service too low? Is it a 60 amp service? Then of course you have to change it out. The money has to go there. Is the box outdated and dangerous? Then you want to change that out. And then after that, it's relatively simple.
Yeah, I see a next step for us of looking at, I liked how you said, if it could just be worked into the normal general inspection. You'd tell the building inspector, look, give me the status of the building inspector, give me the status of the windows, how they perform, give me the status, well, that's pretty much it. And then of each appliance. And those could be brought forward and highlighted in sort of a way where they would be evaluated for how close the building was to being a net zero polluter. And that would give it, if it fell below a certain amount, you'd have to do something.
Yeah, and I think all you have to do is pass that in your city. I don't think you have to fool around. But as I said, it'll get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I
but
think
our league, you can ride on our backs because we are getting ready to pass that and take it to the state, and we're going to pass. We're going to pass a statement that says we think all buildings have to be electrified, and point of sale is essential to getting that done. And it should be up to 1% of the sales price, depending on what localities decide.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's you've given us a lot to think about. Does anybody else have any more questions before I turn it over back to Chair Fassoon to get public input? Oh, I see we've got Chen. Member Chen, please go ahead.
I think as Member Larson, I think you were waiting a while to ask a question.
Go ahead. I'll go after.
I think you guys stack up in order, so
okay.
You're ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one question I had about RICO, which I got to be honest, I'm not super familiar with, is that oftentimes there's kind of a trade-off between how many constraints you put into a mandatory measure and then how quickly it can be updated from like a program design perspective. And, just an example, I don't know too much about RICO, but let's say that, there was a guideline in RICO that said that it was really important to have a certain type of insulation or something. I guess the program ran from, it sounds like 1987 until the mid 2000s. I'm kind of curious, were there any guidelines that changed over that period of time? And how did that process occur? Like, were there ever any sellers who in the middle of selling a house were subject to one guideline and then kind of had to switch tacks really quickly because the guidelines changed? Or I'm just kind of curious from a program design perspective, how those requirements were set, and I guess to some extent how frequently they were updated.
Well, it's frustrating. I mean, things can change. And like if you built a house 10 years ago, you would have been required to put in fluorescent lights. And now it's LEDs. And if you try to replace those fluorescents, first of all, why would you? But secondly, it's not easy. So, RICO, it did have changes. One of the big changes was air duct sealing. That I think you lose about, on average, 40% of your heat through ducts. So that was an important addition. And there were other things over time, but basically, you could also look into BayREN, and there are a lot of, by the way, there are a lot of pretty big rebates now for heat pumps. I think it might go up to 8,000 or 9,000 for a heating system now. So you can just look on the PG&E side, and BayREN also will give, if you super insulate your attic to R55, they'll give you some money back. So it might be good to see what they have available. But again, it's a little bit expensive to go through that. So you have to balance out the expense of the inspection with the rebates you get and see what's worth it. But yeah, the city could help people do that. That's, like get the rebates in line. That would be very good. And on your little inspection sheet, you can probably do that. Tell them how to do it, what the timeline would be in that.
Yeah. Okay. And did that answer your question, Member Chen?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's just a lot There's a lot to digest.
I sent Nick the checklist, the old RICO checklist, and then some of the newer ones, and you can kind of look and compare. It's kind of interesting history.
Yeah, I also know, Berkeley it's a bigger city, it has more staff, it has more of the ability to shoulder the load of a lot of administrative work to sort of supervise and do this. And Albany is challenged in that department. So we kind of look for things that we can piggyback on stuff other, regional entities are doing, like Bayran. If they're doing something, you just go to Bayran and do it. So I think Albany, if it does anything, it's got to be more cookie cutter, sort of check a box, and then you're done, because we're not going to have any resources to do much more than that. But Eric, did you have another question?
I think you may have partially answered the question, and Nick touched on, if Albany was to put in some sort of mandated point of sale electrification, is there any point in the city offering up any monetary support for that? I mean, would that even move the needle at all, or should we just not even bother with that and just say we're just going to put all our resources into making the mandate stick?
Put all your resources into getting the inspection designed and operational, and people can afford to do it. I mean, when I first trained in real estate, I trained with a really great woman, and she said, people always focus on the small money because they understand the small money. But she said, it's not important. So you're paying for a $1.5 million house in Albany. You're going to focus on the $5,000 for the new heat pumps. That's going to give you air conditioning, or allow you to charge your car if it's an upgrade of the box or whatever. So that's what you have to keep in mind. Don't be sidetracked by this argument about, people are suffering, we're suffering, we can't afford another 2 cents. No, I mean, that's not what history has shown.
Yeah.
And besides, we're in a climate emergency, and you know what, guys, we've got to do something. Just tell them that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the levers we can pull, and I just figured I'd ask you, since we got the opportunity, to say, is that even worth bothering with? And I think I figured that was your answer, so that's great. Thank you.
And look at those rebates, and you know what? There are going to be some more substantial rebates coming out. I mean, I wonder if East Bay Community Energy isn't going to start. Are you guys on East Bay Community Energy? Yeah, so they should be starting to give people maybe $9,000 to electrify or something like that. I don't know. You could ask them. A lot of places are. I mean, like Sacramento, Sonoma, they give people a lot of money to electrify because they're private, they're local energy.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of times people think that's an answer, and then you'll look, and a lot of that focus, then Albany isn't really a disadvantaged or challenged community. It's kind of a wealthy community in some respects, although we certainly do have areas where people are much more challenged, but they tend to be renters, they're not homeowners. So what I've found is that these programs that benefit a lot. San Jose had one. You could, if you were in a certain income bracket, you get it was essentially free to get a heat pump water heater put in. Yeah. And that covered your electrical panel upgrade too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was up to something like $8,000 for a heat pump water heater. But that was only if you were within certain income places. And that's, to some degree, should be as it is. Well, this is all very good. And I think, Candace, our subcommittee would love to continue the conversation with you. And I think we'll do that. At this point, I think I'll turn it back over, does anybody else have any more questions?
I just want to say how impressed I am with your committee and all these young people carrying forth and being climate advocates. It's really great. And when you think this is democracy in action, and it is exciting.
Yeah, it is. The challenge is actually getting, it to move forward, and it has to go over a lot of hurdles. And there certainly are political hurdles, and we're mindful of that too.
Yeah.
But the idea is to keep the dialogue going and the ideas flowing, and we got to keep something happening, or it's a real problem. I think we all know that.
Well, I take my hat off to you. It's a great group.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Chair, if you want to open it up for public questions.
Yeah. Does any member of the public? Okay, I see 2 hands raised. So let's go over to public comment.
Okay. David Wemmer. You may be muted. David.
There we go. There we go. Sorry. Candace, really appreciate all your information. Just excellent. I totally support, point of sale or point of listing kind of situation. Time is short, and so the most aggressive, progressive stance that we can progress and put into action, I think we should do. Candace, you had mentioned that you didn't think any of the arguments that the realtors organization put forth is justified, but I wonder if you could elaborate. Actually, what do they say? Why they don't support it? Why they are so aggressive? Because I think it would help me to kind of know what their arguments are, and then why they're not justified in your mind. So when I talk to people in my community, I can make the pitch that they're full of it, and this is the reasons why. And then I'm curious about the RICO, or if we did this kind of point of sale mandate, what about people that don't have cash on hand to spend to do the upgrades prior to sale or listing? And I think of somebody like my mother, who her only asset is her house, and she only lives on Social Security and a small pension, so she wouldn't have even $7,500 to replace a water heater and such. She'd have to go get a loan, or so. I'm just kind of curious, how that would work for those sorts of people that don't have free cash to invest ahead of the sale, but after the sale they have plenty of cash. But just wonder how that might work. And what else? I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Before we jump into this, Lizzie, you can correct me, but I think we need to take all the questions and then Candace can respond to them. So Candace, if you want to jot down, I'm trying to keep track of them too. But I think we have to do it that way. Is that right, Lizzie?
That would probably be best, because otherwise it could easily lead to discussion, I think.
Yeah, rather than, I guess we could let one person ask and then Candace respond and then the next and respond, but you'd rather not do that.
I think the committee might have further questions on each response, in which case we'd be going a long time in between each public comment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would suggest that we take all the public comments, all the questions, and then dive in, and then the committee can ask follow-ups if need be.
Okay, thank you.
So in that case, Jeremiah.
Hi, thank you. I've got questions and comments, if maybe you can filter them out. But I'm no expert. I'm currently in escrow right now for some land. I run into Mr. Eichner every once in a while at Cafe Raj, and Mr. Rago, and then his son Paul Rago is my baseball coach, and Jerome Blank. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional in real estate. I've been around it my whole life, unfortunately. My family owns Security Pacific Real Estate. My uncle's Jack Burns Jr. And I never got to hang out with my friends on the weekends. It was always fixing up my dad's rental properties. And when I was in high school, Home Depot was my Toys R Us. I grew up fast. I appreciate the laughter. It's real, but everything I learned from my dad was priceless. Even though he paid me $5 an hour, it was everything I learned was priceless. I'm still doing things today. Every day I'm helping people fix up their homes or their businesses or whatever I could do. My dad's just bought another house in El Cerrito, behind Cerrito Park, beyond the baseball field right there on El Dorado. It's that corner. There's 2 houses. I've been fixing it up past 3-4 months, putting in heat pumps, convincing my dad to go climate action. You know, he's just kind of the landlord that wants to just put in paint and new appliances. But I've been encouraging electric. So I even paid my own money to buy it was like $700 to put an electric washer dryer combo in the back house. Yeah, thanks. It was from this place over in San Rafael. But anyway, long story short, you know, as a buyer, you don't want to pay for anything. You know, and I think at the point of listing would be great. You know, at least it's there. And, you know, maybe it could just be something on title. I don't know if it could be cleared with the county or the city, if it's something is sent to go on title as a code violation or something. But it's a good goal. But we don't want to make it a punishment, right? We want to make it to where the buyer has incentive to buy it, to where they got a year and then maybe Albany helps them pay for it. You know, we got all these programs and classes. You know, so we don't want to force it too much. I think point of listing is great. But we just don't want the buyer to have to pay for anything. That's not usually how it goes. But this is a great thing. I would suggest recommending to City Council. It's a great goal. And more for discussion.
Okay. Lucinda Young.
Hi, I'm a Albany homeowner, bought a home in Albany 10 years ago, and I do follow real estate sales, and they're through the roof right now. I just saw a home, I think it was last week, that sold across from Memorial Park. It was just a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home for over $2 million. So in my opinion, this is a prime time at the point of sale when there's all this money available to do this much needed work to address the climate crisis. So I fully support a mandate, as well as also, I think it's important to have emissions disclosure, as I think Nick had mentioned, is commonplace in Europe. It just only makes sense. You're making this huge purchase, and there's all this other information that is required to be disclosed to the buyer. Why would carbon emissions not be disclosed? And we didn't hear today what objections realtors are making, but what I would anticipate is that they would object that, housing prices are already so high, and that this would push the housing prices up more. But with the prices of housing as high as they are, the cost of adding an electric heat pump, water heater, or even a furnace is pennies compared to the sales, what these homes are selling for right now. And I'm in the process of fully electrifying our home. We do have the hot water and the furnace are the only 2 things left. And I have looked at rebates. There's some significant rebates, both from Bay Rim, Tech Clean, and even City of Albany is offering some small rebates, or will be, I guess, soon. So, all of those really brings the price of doing this work down. And then also, I'm just wondering if, Measure DD, which the Albany voters passed, perhaps some of those funds could also be allocated to reduce the cost of these changes, assuming there's going to be, and I would assume that's going to be the source of objections, that it's too expensive to make these changes. Thank you. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. I think it's really great. Thank you.
Okay, there are no other members of the public with their hands raised. So back to you, Chair Passoon.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments or anything? Last minute
Yeah, and Candace, this is your chance to respond to any of those questions you want from the public.
So let's say you decided to have a specific amount of money maximum, and it would be, and specify that it would be split 50-50. The reason to do that would be, right now, everything goes to the buyer because sewer, sidewalk, everything's optional. And it just all gets piled on the buyer. So the buyers are in a weak position right now. There's not enough for them to buy. They have to really scrounge around. So why shouldn't the seller pay for some of it? But let's say, as this gentleman said, the seller doesn't have any money. That's a pretty common problem. You can just have them credit some funds. I mean, what you want to do with point of listing is make sure nobody improves their house by putting in gas appliances in order to make it look nicer and sell it, because then they're already in the gas system another 20 years or something. So you want to say, stop right here. Don't do anything unless it's electric. We want you to know that right now as a seller. And then get this inspection. It'll tell you what the steps are towards total electrification and what the first steps are that you need to do now. This is your responsibility. You two guys, you pay 50-50, okay? But for someone who doesn't have the money up front to put in the new water heater, just sell it as is and then credit some money to the buyer. That's it. And that just comes out at the end when all the funds are released. So it's painless. It's very painless. Then the emissions disclosures are good. The problem with them is you have to have an inspection for that. And I would say it's easier just to have an electrification inspection. You could have an electrification score, 0, you have nothing electric in your house, or 10, you ripped out your gas meter. But and put that and tell the OBAR that they have to put it in the they have to have, Albany houses have to have that in there, either in the comments or something. But yeah, in terms of the real estate, I think the gentleman whose family was from Security Pacific, he had it right. I mean, that's the argument that realtors will make, that the buyers don't want to pay anything. It's too expensive. But again, I go back to the fact that Berkeley and several other cities throughout America had these mandatory measures at one time. And there have been studies done. I don't know if I can pull one out at this point. I did it years ago when I was trying to get Berkeley to go back to them. We as a league, but there were studies done about these few examples that didn't get shot down by the powers that be, and they were very effective. You really get stuff done. So at this point, you have to just say, we've got to do it. We've got to make the start. And this is how we're going to do it. Because existing homes, as Nick said, are most of what we've got. We're not going to make a huge dent with new construction unless we have so many wildfires that we suddenly have to, which we might.
Hopefully that won't happen in Albany. I mean, that's not the way to change, is to have your whole town burned to the ground and have to rebuild it. I mean,
that's what the climate models are telling us in Berkeley. So, we need to, I agree with everyone who said we have to move very quickly, and hopefully I'm really encouraged by you guys, your initiative here.
Well, thank you very much. Does anybody else on the committee have any comments they want to make or further questions? I think we need to wrap this up. And Candace, we will be back in touch with you. I want to kick some of these ideas around some more.
And I sent Nick some of the PDFs from Berkeley's hearings on electrification. So I hope those will be of interest to you guys. And also there's something called the Berkeley Electrification Working Group. If you guys are interested and want to get in that group, there are a lot of good emails that come out from people with new stuff going on. And just contact me and I'll set it up with Nick or whoever wants to do it.
Great, thank you so much. Anybody? Looks, well, Chair, it looks like we're done. So that was a lot to process. And I'm sure we'll think about it some more. So Member Bekatesh and myself will we'll continue working the subcommittee and come up with some further ideas to discuss. Lizzie, if committee members want to contribute some thoughts, I know we really have to be careful about how we correspond, but should they just send you information and you will collect it? Or how could we get further input without dragging this one? I don't want to run the meeting out too long, but I guess the subcommittee will try to, if people want to get the subcommittee information, do they have to do it right now or can they send something through you?
Yeah, they should do it right now because otherwise we're kind of having a closed door meeting. If everyone's sending their input to you all and it's not shared publicly. So I would say if committee members have things they want to share with the subcommittee now would be the best time to do it.
Okay, so does anybody have anything they want to share? Looks like we're on to the next item then. So thank you, Candace, and I turn it back over to the chair.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Let's go on to item 6-3, which is the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Key Performance Indicators.
And that's me.
Sorry, Michelle. We do only have about 18 minutes left before the committee's designated end time. And I imagine, even though Michelle is a fabulous presenter, I imagine that this meeting will not conclude before 9 o'clock. So I would recommend that the committee consider a meeting extension if that is something the committee would like to do.
Well, I could make a motion to extend the meeting another 30 minutes.
To 9:15.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Committee member Breeding?
Yes.
Committee member Chen?
Yes, but that's probably a hard stop for me.
Okay. Committee member Larson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mira Venkatesh?
Yes, but also a hard stop for me.
Committee member Mohammed?
Yes.
Committee member Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Fasoon?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. The meeting can continue to 9:15. And then just hearing the feedback in that motion, if I may, and of course, this is also up to the chair and the committee. I discussed with the chair previously that this is a presentation that if the committee would like to spend more time discussing it after the fact, we can bring it back next month. There's no action to be taken. It's just analysis of our KPIs. So if we find ourselves close to the time that a few committee members expressed that it's a hard stop, I think by my count, we would still be at a quorum, but just a quorum. So the committee is welcome to request that this item is continued to another meeting, time permitting.
Okay, great. With that, I'll go ahead and try to be quick about it. So I'm going to be presenting on our key performance indicators. This is the way that we track our progress on our climate action adaptation plan. A few notes about the data here. As we all know, 2020 was a little unusual. And as such, it resulted in a lot of anomalous data and missing data, and some weird things, and things we kind of won't really get a sense of for a few more years of how it's impacted things. Another note, the waste data and the residential energy data is pretty precise. Everything else is an estimate with varying degrees of accuracy. And finally, we really don't have non-residential energy data due to a rule called the 1515 rule that was put in place by the Public Utilities Commission. And it's basically to protect privacy because we have a few very large non-residential places that use energy in the city. So notes there. But just to go into the overview, in 2020, the city of Albany produced about 45,700 metric tons of CO2, which is about 2.69 tons per person. And as you can see, most of that is coming from transportation and from gas usage in buildings. And then there's, little slivers on the side. You can see that the residential and non-residential electricity is under 2%, just, from the few people that are on PG&E or the Bright Choice plan. But really it's coming from transportation and gas. And in comparison with 2019, you'll notice that there's a big drop, specifically in the transportation column here. Transportation emissions went down by about a third in 2020 because everybody was just hanging out at home and not really driving anywhere. So that's really the big change and the major anomaly that we'll see here. But I will note that in all of these other columns as well, there is a small kind of more normal sized reduction, which we should be happy about. And the gas and transportation together make up about 89% of our emissions for 2020. So really, almost all of it. And then this is a weird chart. So the blue line here is our climate action adaptation plan goal for emissions reduction. So down 25% by 2020, and then down 100% to carbon neutral by 2045. And the orange line is our actual emissions reductions that we've had every year. And as you can see, there's, a nice healthy downward curve, and then we just see it plummet last year. Again, that's because the transportation data, it's so much lower, people staying at home. We should expect to see it shoot back up in 2021, and that, that's not really a problem. We're just hoping that it kind of stays on that overall long-term trajectory. I will note, though, it's important to notice in here that in the years leading up to this past year, we do see that orange line starting to flatten a little bit. So we kind of beat our targets early on in the last decade, but then started to slow down. So there's definitely still work to do, even though this chart looks pretty good just from the first glance. And this is a kind of closer up look at that orange line there. You can see our emissions in each of these years going down, especially early on. And then again, the dropping in 2020. This is just broken down by source. So you'll notice that the purple squares are bigger in those earlier years. That's the electricity emissions. And in 2017, 2019, we see those really go down to almost nothing. So that's been a pretty big part of our progress, as well as a reduction in the natural gas. Those are the blue ones. And now I'll just dig a little bit into the natural gas and the building emissions in general. So this shows our gas usage in therms and then electricity in kilowatts. It's not emissions here because remember the electricity emissions are now basically nothing. But it does give you a sense of where people are using energy in their homes. The gas chart here is kind of wild. We see this massive drop from 2011 to 2015, and then it's rising again. This is largely due to changes in weather, warm years versus cold. We are happy to see that in 2020, we did see it dip for the first time in 5 years. Getting this to go down is obviously really, really important to meeting our targets. It's still kind of unclear whether that's going to be a trend into the future. It seems like it's sort of flattening, but that 2021 data is still provisional, so we can't say for sure. But it might be a good sign. You'll see here over in the chart to the right here that electricity use actually spiked in 2020 when people are staying home and turning on their lights all day. So the fact that they're not increasing gas usage might be a good sign. It might mean that some of our early electrification efforts are working, but it's really kind of too early to tell. And then to those vehicle miles traveled data, this is the one that I said was really unusual. So this is just the average miles traveled in vehicles per person per day. And over the last 10 years, we've been on this really, really slow decline, and then it just plummets. So we should expect this to go back up to a more normal level. It's hard to say what exactly the long-term impacts of COVID-19 are going to be, whether people are really working from home a lot more often into the long term. That might help us see this kind of never really get back up as high as it was before. And we should hope that that's the case. Obviously, we'd like to see the VMT go down very low. But another note is that, this slow decline has been very slow and hasn't actually kept up with our population increase. So the overall VMT, not per capita, just overall, has actually been rising a little bit in the last few years. So as our population continues to grow, we're going to have to work hard to bring this VMT number down quickly. One thing that's going to help us do that is a reduction in the vehicle population, the total number of vehicles that are registered in Albany. We have seen a pretty good decline in the vehicles per capita. It's headed down towards 0.5 pretty quickly here, going faster than the county or the state. So that's good news. We're seeing a lot of people ditch their cars. And at the same time, we're seeing a pretty significant increase in electric vehicles. So the chart on the left here is EVs as a percent of that total vehicle population. It's getting up towards 6%. And I think for 2021, it's actually going to be maybe past 7%. Again, going faster than the state or county. So doing good. And in 2021, we actually saw a huge uptick in EVs as a percent of purchases. So those numbers haven't quite shown up in the total vehicle population yet, but they made up over 20% of the vehicle purchases in 2021, which is a pretty huge number and a really big increase from 2020. It seems like it's really starting to catch on and pick up the pace, which you can see just walking around. There's a lot of EVs out there now. Public transit is a different story. So between February and April of 2020, the total number of BART riders in Albany dropped by 95%. So at the bottom of that chart there, that's just 5% of the pre-COVID ridership level. It's been going up since then pretty steadily with a few dips and the times that we have those kind of, upticks in disease. We're now at about a third of our pre-COVID level. So, it's getting back up there, but it's taking a while. And, we can't be sure if it's ever really going to reach that level as that before. We can do our best, but it's been tricky. Waste-wise, haven't had a huge number of changes in the last couple of years. There has been a dip citywide in landfill waste, but that's probably just because of a reduction in retail activity. We see a dip in waste every time there's an economic downturn. If you look at the residential side, you'll actually see there's a small uptick in landfill waste. So, that's not great news, but it's not a huge change. There was a bit of a bump in organics in 2020. My guess is people were doing a lot of gardening. So you can see it goes back down to normal. I don't think that's a huge shift either. And the waste mix has stayed pretty much steady. Again, a little bump with organics in 2020, but overall it's pretty much the same year over year. We have a 51% diversion rate, which is pretty good, but there's still room to grow there. And then for our municipal emissions, there's not a huge amount of data, but I was able to find some data on the municipal buildings. So you can see that that drop in electricity emissions since we joined with the EBC and got renewable energy has made a huge impact, bringing our emissions way, way lower in the last few years. But still, the natural gas emissions have been going up in the last few years, just like citywide. Again, a drop in 2020 as to be expected, but our overall trend line isn't looking as good. And so we definitely need to work on electrifying our city buildings. And municipal waste, we just have the last 3 years. So, it's a little bit hard to get a sense of what the long-term looks like. Obviously, there's a dip in 2020, but it actually stays even lower in 2021. And most of our buildings are really back up and running now. So that might be a good sign for the long term. We could work on our diversion rate. It's only at about 35%. So we could definitely bring it up to try to match the rest of the city as a whole, although sometimes that's difficult with the different kinds of waste we have on a city level. So, and just quickly, in terms of the overall conclusions, the good news is that we are on track with our emissions targets. We're actually a bit ahead of schedule, which is great news. Obviously, 2020 was unusual, so it is difficult in some ways to get a good sense of where we're at on our progress. It does seem like natural gas use might be starting to drop. We can hope so. And it's really important that it does drop, because now that our electricity emissions are basically at zero, everything else from our building sector has to come from electrification. And then in terms of transportation, we have great news from our falling vehicle population and the rise of EVs. As far as how our VMT trend is going, it's pretty unclear. We'd really like it to drop faster than it has been in the past. But the way that COVID's going to change that outlook is really time will tell. And like I said, with the waste, we're seeing that decrease from the economic changes, but we're actually having some increase in residential waste. So that's a room for growth as well. Whew. All right, now I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And of course, also happy to talk about this in more detail at our next meeting if we need to also.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, hey, thank you. I mean, that's really, it really shows how important or how impactful vehicle use is, especially gas-powered vehicles. We really need to keep encouraging people to stop driving. One question I had, I went through my own little kind of thing here where I realized over the past, I've been driving all electric for about 2 years now. And I'm realizing now that I've got about a 50% increase in my electrical bill due to charging vehicles, pretty much. There's a few other things that fed into it because I'm almost fully electrified in my house now too. So my other appliances became electric. But I think the big increase was from vehicle drive. So one would think as more electric vehicles start to come into Albany, and it was really great to see that increase. And I have seen more people getting electric vehicles in my neighborhood and around. But wouldn't we expect to see, as more transportation energy goes onto the grid, or at least into electric vehicles, we'd expect to see some increase in electrical use for that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are seeing some increase in electrical use. Obviously that spike in 2020, but 2021 was also higher than 2019. I think at this point, because EVs are only 6 or 7% of the vehicle population, it's not going to make a huge impact on our overall chart, but we will expect it to go up and up. And we're hoping, obviously, that in the coming years, that electricity chart will actually rise as the gas one falls. So I think we can expect to see that.
Thank you. Kind of a follow on that was you did a really good chart. Remember, we did that projection chart where car sales, how much would have to be going to EVs versus, do you remember that, Michelle? And we had, yes, that chart. So have you been able to correlate back to that? And I know this is only a 2-year period. Are we hitting those?
I knew you'd bring this up. So I put it at the end of my slides. Yeah, so we're actually, we've got here in blue our kind of projection of total car population. So for 2020, we've had it at about 5%, so we're a little above that. And then the orange line here is total purchases, and we're actually up here at about 21%. So a little above our targets here.
That's
obviously
great.
This is our projection and estimates, but it is above those targets in both cases. So great news.
That's super. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Committee Member Chen.
Yeah, this is pretty in the weeds, but just a methodology question. How do we calculate vehicle miles traveled? Is that based on just cars, or does that include like buses and stuff? Or
yeah, it includes any kind of vehicle, buses and motorcycles and all that stuff. Previously, it was estimates from MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, that did some surveys. And due to some methodological changes from 2020, it's shifted now, and 2020 was based on Google Environmental Insights Explorer, which basically uses aggregated data from Google and Google Maps. So I think it's actually a little bit more accurate, and it lines up pretty closely with the data we had previously. Any other questions?
There's not any questions. Are we gonna go? Wait, so are we going on to comments?
We can open it up to public comment.
Okay. Okay, so I see 2 hands raised, so let's go over to those.
Okay. Jeremiah?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, it's really windy and rainy out here. So, I was wondering if, let's say, I were to buy a hybrid vehicle, which means gas or electric, am I cool enough to be considered an electric vehicle on your chart? Because it just says, EV electric vehicle, but does that include hybrid as well? Is hybrid an electric vehicle? That was one question. And then, so the infrastructure, right? We need the infrastructure of these charging stations. We need that first, and then we can have the policies to make city vehicles, electric or hybrid. I'm just wondering why isn't every single parking space at the city hall, electrified, or at Public Works, on our public streets? Where's the infrastructure? We want people to buy and spend money on electric cars, but we haven't developed the infrastructure first. So I think we have an infrastructure problem right now. I mean, there's a supply and demand issue. We got the supply, we got all these electric cars, but where do they charge them? The city doesn't even, I think our ambulance is small enough to be a hybrid or electric someday, but our fire truck's too big to be electric. And, maybe on the chart, we can get a survey from the fire department and police station, how much they spend on gas at Arco gas station. Because all the police department, they fill up their gas at Arco. At least they don't go to Shell and get overpriced. So we would just, see how much their credit cards are spending on fueling up. There's a clipboard at the gas station. you know, or so the data's there for how much the fire. I mean, how far does the fire truck really travel? You know, from fire station to, you know, the old folks home down the street on San Pablo. You know, it's just, how many fires are there really in Albany? You know, the fire truck is really big and it burns a lot of diesel. Every time there's a call, it's the ambulance and the fire truck. You know, how about a hybrid ambulance and maybe a smaller hybrid just water truck? You know, just bring some water. I don't know. There's some solutions. The fire truck's too big, too much of a diesel guzzler, drives too much, and the ambulances are small enough to be hybrid someday, and maybe just a smaller water truck.
Lucinda?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Michelle for the great presentation and ask if these slides might be made available. I think it would be great to be able to share these slides, go over and review them, and also share them with others who weren't at the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other members of the public with their hands raised.
I can respond to those questions, Chair.
Perfect.
Awesome. So for the hybrid vehicle question, yeah, so electric vehicles include both fully electric and hybrid electric vehicles. That's the 6% figure you saw there. About 55% are battery electric and 45% of those are plug-in hybrids. And then the slides will be available. So there's a memo, a spreadsheet, and these slides that are all available on our city website. I think that Lizzie can probably direct you to it, but yeah, they'll all be available. And we also have a page for our climate action plan that I always put the kind of main charts and the memo and the attachments on as well. So you can find it there also.
Yes. Just to quickly add to that, if you go to our city webpage, hover over departments, then go down to sustainability, you'll see that one of the subheadings under sustainability is climate action and adaptation planning. If you click that, the main page it takes you to, if you scroll down, there's a subheader that says progress. And then it has a link to last year's presentation. And once it's ready, we will swap out last year's presentation with this year's presentation. And it includes both the report, which is the staff report, and the KPI, the staff report plus the slides. And then it'll also include the KPI spreadsheet that was included with this agenda packet. If anyone has trouble finding that, please let me know.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments? I just want to bring awareness that it is 9:08 and many members have a hard stop coming up. So if anyone else doesn't have any other comments, I recommend moving along. Does that sound good? Okay. I think we can move along to subcommittee updates. Starting off with the engagement and outreach subcommittee. I'm on that. I don't think we have any updates. Committee member Larson, do you have anything to add or?
No, I haven't done anything over the last, and I haven't heard from anybody as a result of any of the forum outreach. So, go.
Okay. Zero emission transportation subcommittee.
I can't think of anything, Eric. I don't think we have done anything more since last time, have we?
No.
Okay, so nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Then we can go on to item 7, which is just future agenda items.
Are there any requests for future agenda items? I know we went through the KPI presentation pretty quick, but I didn't necessarily hear a request to come back to it next month unless I missed it. So if someone does want that, please say so.
Committee Member Peterson, did you have your hand raised?
Well, I had something I wanted to make sure we keep on top of, and I know we had a report on the vehicle electrification 10-year plan, of which none of the police vehicles were included at all. And I just went by the Albany police station today and saw the huge lineup of gas guzzling SUVs, all 9 of them there, not driving around, all just sitting there. And I just, having done research on that, I just think we need to go back and bring them in, and they should actually be the first, because I think it would really benefit the police department for the community to see them making an effort to not just be like every other police department in America that drives a big, huge gas guzzling SUV around, and try to do something a little bit, at least with a certain percentage at a certain time of their fleet, go over to that. So I think we need to revisit that quickly, because I think it was last year, we spent pushing 100,000 on 2 new SUVs. So, we missed an opportunity to do something then. And of course, everyone says it's too hard and they looked at it and whatever, but it's a quickly moving target. And I've got links to a couple police organizations back on the East Coast that did this and actually were less cost going to Tesla 3 vehicles than the normal Ford, whatever it is, big gas guzzling SUV. So I just don't want us to lose track of that. And I think it's urgent. I think it would be an important thing for the city to do.
Okay,
yeah, sorry, real quick. We can look into it. I think you said it yourself. This is kind of a tricky one. But in the process of working on the fleet electrification plan, and the first step of implementing that being putting in chargers, I think we can come back with more information. It just might not be in the next couple of months, but it's on our radar.
Yeah, that's fine. I can only bring this up as future items if we don't do it next time, but I want it to come back sooner than later, and certainly not in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Committee Member Peterson. Does anyone else have any future agenda items? Okay, if no one else has any future agenda items they would like to mention, I think we can adjourn this meeting, and our next meeting.
We do have a member of the public with their hand raised, so don't log off yet.
Sorry, didn't see that. Okay, let's go on to public comment.
Okay. Jeremiah?
Yeah, I was going to make some future agenda items like, bans on plastic straws and things like that, and more EV stations at our city buildings like the library and community center parking lot, and just the city setting an example. But I was just captivated just now by the last future agenda item. So I want to create a future agenda item that totally piggybacks on the last future agenda item because it's so perfect. So here it goes. That every time the city manager or police department puts on the agenda for city council to buy a new vehicle, that before it goes to city council's agenda, it goes up for review with the Climate Action Committee first to review what the police is going to buy. Pros and cons. Is it a gas guzzler? Is it a hybrid? Is it electric? To review it first and then make a recommendation to city council, about purchasing this vehicle, this gas guzzler, this CO2, this carbon emitter, potentially. I think that's a great idea. Okay.
Okay, no other members of the public with their hands raised. So back to you, Chair Fasoon.
Okay. With that, I think we can actually adjourn the meeting this time. If no one has anything else to say, our next meeting will be May 18th, and we're ending right on time. So very convenient. Whew.
Good job.
Thanks all.